back to it. But he could not forget the bear attack, or the rain and cold, and he knew that the good weather and his luck wouldn't last, and he really had no time to waste. He took the arrows out and rummaged around in the survival pack for his feather stash. He had found early on that full bird feathers from the wing and tail worked the best for arrows, and he had saved every wing and tail feather from every full bird that he had shot, and he took them out now. These arrows were different. They were heavier, and he worried that the width of the point would catch the air and counteract the feathers in some way. The solution, he felt, was to make the feathers longer. He selected only 2 feathers for each arrow, but left them a full 6 inches long, and shaved the flat side with the knife the full length of each feather so that it would fit the arrow shaft. He attached the arrows with pieces of thread from his old windbreaker, wrapping them at the front and the rear, and then smearing them with bits of warm pine sap, a trick he had learned when he had leaned against some sap on a tree and stuck to it, to protect the thread. He did 3 arrows, working slowly and carefully before going at last to sleep. Once again, he slept so hard that he awakened with his head jammed into the ground and his neck stiff from not moving all night. Because of all the meat from the doe, he did not have to hunt for days now, at least 10 or 12, maybe 2 weeks, and he worked all day on the arrows and bow, sitting next to the shelter in the warm sun, snacking on the jellied meat now and then. By dark this day, all 9 arrows were finished. He had used a hunting knife as a scraper to shape the limbs of the bow more equally and to put in notches for the string to get it ready to string the next day for the shooting trials. He was just leaning back, half cocky about how well things were going when he smelled the skunk. Uh-oh. He had run into skunks before, of course, saw them all the time, but had only had the one really bad experience when he got sprayed directly. He knew they moved at night, hunting, and didn't seem very afraid of anything. He looked out of the shelter opening carefully. The skunk wasn't 4 feet away, looking in at him at the shelter and the fire, and as he watched, it whipped up its rear end and tipped its tail over and aimed directly at his face. I'm dead, he thought, and froze. For a long time they stayed that way, Brian holding his breath waiting to be nailed and the skunk aiming at him. But the skunk didn't spray, just aimed and held it. He's hungry, Brian thought, that's all. He's hunting and he's hungry. Slowly Brian reached to his right, where the meat was stored back in the corner, and took a piece of the venison. With a smooth, slow movement, he tossed the meat out to the right of the skunk. For a split second, he thought it was over. The skunk's tail jerked when the meat hit the ground, but then its nose twitched, and as it smelled it and it lowered its tail, turned and started eating the meat. Brian carefully reached out to the side and pulled the door back over the opening and left the skunk outside eating. Great, he thought, crawling back into his bag to sleep. I've got a pet skunk who's a terrorist. If I quit feeding him, he'll spray me. Just great. His eyes closed and he sighed. Maybe he'll be gone in the morning. All right. So that was chapter 5. So quickly, let's talk about what just happened before we get into the questions. So in that chapter, we saw Brian get some more good luck. So we saw that Brian was able to come up on deer meat because the wolves that he heard in the previous chapter, they found the deer, they killed it, but the wolves can only eat so much at once. And unlike humans, they don't have hands to carry the deer back, so they had to basically get what they could, and then they left it there. Brian was able to take the whole deer for himself, and he was able to not only use the meat for a very long time, but he could use the skin and the fur of the deer for a very long time, too, to make another vest in addition to the vest he already had from the rabbit. So with that being said, two things I want to talk about. The first thing is when Brian first went to go see the deer, why did he stopped because he went to go, he said, oh, I wonder if there's some deer left for me. Then he stopped and he went back to get his knife, his hatchet, and his spear. Why didn't he just go to the deer and bring it back? Why did he need to bring all those tools with him? So I want you to think about that. And the second question I want you to answer is, was it a good thing that Brian fed the skunk and it left him alone for a second, or is that going to be a bad thing? So kind of I want you to make a prediction. Do you think it's a good thing that Brian fed the skunk and made peace with the skunk basically, or do you think it's a bad thing that Brian fed the skunk and now he's going to have to feed him all the time, or now the skunk is going to keep bribing him and doing all these things? So it's Monday. It's the first day of the week. I know nobody likes Monday, and it was a short chapter, so I'm going to be nice and only give you 2 questions for today. So those are your 2 questions. Answer them on paper, send them to your teacher, type them out, send them to your teacher, or just have a discussion with your family members. As long as you're doing the questions, I'm fine with that. Thank you again for tuning in. Don't forget to vote for glasses. I'll go through the options once again. For new tuner enters, that's a word, option 3. was option 2. That was option 2. Sorry. This is option 1. That was option 2. Option 3. Option 4. Option 5. Option 6. Thank you for tuning in. And let's start this week off with a bang. It's Monday. Let's keep going. Let's keep working hard just like we did last week. And yeah, keep it up. All right. I will see you tomorrow. Goodbye.